Jack seared the alien meat sizzling in the pan, the tantalizing aroma wafting through the galley of the Andromeda, while the notorious space pirate Zark held the crew at gunpoint, demanding the quantum crystals. Jack was a simple human chef, gifted at his craft, but often dismissed by the alien crew who preferred bland nutrient paste. He toiled away preparing gourmet meals, desperate for approval from Captain Zorax, the gruff Krillian commanding the freighter. The ship was hauling priceless quantum crystals when ambushed by Zark's pirate fleet. The ruthless Zorgian stormed the cargo bay, cybernetic eye glinting, guns trained on Zorax and the helpless crew. Hidden in the galley, Jack overheard everything on the intercom. Without those crystals, thousands of humans on the Zeta Centauri colony would perish, their life support systems failing. Jack knew it was up to him to outwit the pirates and save the day. He had to act fast. Human lives depended on it. Armed only with his culinary genius and a few exotic ingredients, the human chef hatched a desperate plan to shock the space pirates with his delicious cooking and save the crew, the crystals, and the innocent colonists. It was crazy. It was hopeless. But it was humanity's only chance. Jack kept his eyes glued to the security feed, studying the pirates as they held the crew at gunpoint. Zark was barking orders, his cybernetic eye darting between the crew members. But as Jack watched, he noticed the subtle signs of fatigue in the pirates' posture. Their shoulders were slumped, and their movements were sluggish. It was clear that they were running on fumes, and Jack knew that exhaustion could make even the most hardened criminals sloppy. That's when the idea hit him. If he could just get the pirates to let their guard down for a moment, maybe he could create an opening for the crew to turn the tables. And what better way to do that than with a hearty meal? Jack rushed to the pantry, his mind racing as he scanned the shelves for ingredients. He grabbed a few cans of broth, some vegetables, and a package of freeze-dried meat. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. As he worked, Jack thought back to his days at the Culinary Academy on Earth. He had always been fascinated by the cuisine of other cultures, and he had made it his mission to learn as much as he could about the flavors and techniques of alien races. Now, that knowledge was going to come in handy. He started with a base of savory broth, adding in the meat and vegetables as he went. Then he reached for his secret weapon, a jar of spices that he had collected from all over the galaxy. There was a peppery seasoning from the Krillian homeworld, a sweet and tangy herb from the Zorgian colonies, and even a few pinches of a rare spice from the far reaches of the Andromeda galaxy. As the stew simmered, the galley filled with an aroma that was at once familiar and exotic. It was a scent that seemed to speak to something primal in the human brain, evoking memories of home and comfort. Jack ladled the stew into a few bowls and took a deep breath. This was it, the moment of truth. He made his way to the cargo bay, trying to keep his hands steady as he balanced the bowls on a tray. As he entered the room, the pirates turned to face him, their weapons trained on his chest. "What the hell is this?" Zark growled, his cybernetic eye flashing. Jack held up the tray, trying to keep his voice calm. "I thought you guys might be hungry," he said. "I made some stew. It's got a little something for everyone." Zark narrowed his eyes, but he didn't shoot. "You think we're going to fall for that? It's probably poisoned." Jack shook his head. "No way, I'm a chef, not a killer. Look, I'll even take the first bite." He set the tray down on a nearby crate and picked up a bowl. Slowly, he lifted a spoonful of stew to his lips and swallowed. The flavors exploded on his tongue, a perfect balance of savory and spicy. "See," he said, holding up the empty spoon, "totally safe and delicious if I do say so myself." Zark hesitated for a moment, but then he motioned for one of his men to take a bowl. The pirate sniffed at the stew suspiciously, but then he shrugged and took a bite. His eyes widened, and he let out a low moan of pleasure. "Boss, you gotta try this," he said, shoveling another spoonful into his mouth. One by one, the other pirates stepped forward to grab a bowl. Soon the cargo bay was filled with the sound of slurping and contented sighs. Jack watched as Zark took a tentative bite, his cybernetic eye whirring as he analyzed the flavors. For a moment, the pirate captain was silent. Then, slowly, a grin spread across his face. Not bad, human, he said, taking another bite. Not bad at all. As the pirates devoured the stew, Jack could see the tension draining from their bodies. For a moment they seemed to forget all about the hostages and the quantum crystals. They were just a bunch of hungry guys enjoying a good meal. Jack smiled to himself as he slipped back into the galley to prepare another batch. It wasn't much, but it was a start. And who knew? Maybe, with a little more culinary magic, he could turn this whole situation around. The pirates scarfed down the stew like ravenous beasts, slurping and smacking their lips with each spoonful. The cargo bay filled with the clanking of spoons against bowls and satisfied grunts. Zark's men were so engrossed in their meals that their weapons hung limply at their sides, forgotten. Zark himself savored each mouthful, his cybernetic eye dimming as he lost himself in the flavors. He looked up at Jack, a newfound respect glinting in his organic eye. "I gotta hand it to you, human," Zark said between bites. "You've got a real talent here. I've never tasted anything like this before." Jack smiled, feeling a swell of pride in his chest. "Thanks. Cooking's always been my passion. It's what I was born to do." Zark nodded, his gaze turning distant. Must be nice having a purpose like that, knowing exactly where you belong in the universe. Jack cocked his head, sensing a deeper meaning behind the pirate's words. "What do you mean?" Zark sighed, setting his bowl aside. "I never really fit in back on Zorg. My people value strength above all else. If you can't fight, you're nothing. And me? I was always more interested in tinkering with gadgets than bashing skulls." He tapped his cybernetic eye. "I got this in a scrap with some Krillian raiders. Thought it would make me more intimidating, more respected, but it just made me feel like even more of a freak." Jack listened intently, understanding dawning on his face. "So that's why you turned to piracy? To find a place where you belonged?" Zark shrugged. "It was either that or spend the rest of my life as an outcast. At least out here I'm in charge, I make the rules." Jack nodded slowly. "I get it. Believe it or not, I know what it's like to feel like you don't belong." Zark raised an eyebrow. "You? But you're a genius in the kitchen. How could you not fit in?" Jack chuckled. "You'd be surprised. Back on Earth, I was always the odd one out. While other kids were playing sports and going to parties, I was experimenting with recipes in my parents' kitchen." He shook his head. "I got picked on a lot, called names, but I never let it get to me because I knew that cooking was my true calling. It was the one thing that made me feel like I had a place in the world." Zark listened, his expression softening. "Guess we're not so different after all, huh?" Jack grinned. "Guess not. Funny how a good meal can bring people together, no matter where they come from or what they've been through." Zark returned the smile, a genuine warmth in his eye. "You're all right, human, for a chef anyway." As the two laughed and talked, Zorax and the rest of the crew watched in stunned silence. The gruff Krillian captain couldn't believe his eyes. Just minutes ago they had been staring down the barrels of the pirates' guns. Now the same ruthless criminals were chatting with Jack like old friends. Zorax shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know how he does it," he muttered to his first mate. "That human's got a gift." The first mate nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "Maybe there's more to these humans than we thought. If they can turn a bunch of bloodthirsty pirates into pussycats with a bowl of stew, who knows what else they're capable of." As the cargo bay filled with the sound of laughter and the clinking of spoons, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. He had always known that food had the power to bring people together, but he never could have imagined that his cooking would one day save an entire colony. For now, though, he was content to bask in the warmth of the moment. The quantum crystals were safe, the crew was unharmed, and he had made some unlikely new friends. All in all, not a bad day's work for a simple human chef. As the pirates scraped the last bits of stew from their bowls, a contented silence settled over the cargo bay. Zark set his bowl down with a clank and stood up, his cybernetic eye whirring as he surveyed the room. "Listen up, everyone," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet. "I've got an announcement to make." The crew of the Andromeda tensed, bracing themselves for the worst. But what came out of Zark's mouth next left them all stunned. "We're not going to steal the quantum crystals," he said, his gaze locking with Zorax's. "Instead, we're going to escort you safely to Zeta Centauri." Zorax's jaw dropped, his eyes widening in disbelief. "You're joking, right? This has to be some kind of trick." Zark shook his head, his expression serious. "No trick. You have my word. As a Zorgian and a pirate, we'll make sure you get to your destination in one piece." The Krillian captain stared at Zark for a long moment, searching for any sign of deceit, but there was none to be found. Slowly, he nodded. "All right. I don't know what brought about this change of heart, but I'm not going to question it." Jack stepped forward, a grin spreading across his face. "I think I might have an idea." He turned to Zark, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "What if I taught you and your crew how to cook? You could leave the pirate life behind, find a new purpose." Zark blinked, his organic eye widening. "You'd do that? For us?" Jack nodded. "Everyone deserves a second chance, and I think you've got a real talent for this. All of you do." The pirates looked at each other, murmuring amongst themselves. Some looked skeptical, others hopeful. But Zark silenced them with a raised hand. "I'm in," he said, his voice firm. "If Jack thinks we've got what it takes, then I'm willing to give it a shot." Over the next few days, the galley of the Andromeda became a hive of activity. Jack worked tirelessly with the pirates, teaching them the basics of cooking and helping them discover their own unique culinary talents. Zark, in particular, took to it like a fish to water. He had a natural intuition for flavors and a keen eye for presentation. Jack took him under his wing, guiding him through more advanced techniques and recipes. The two spent hours huddled over the stove, experimenting with different ingredients and combinations. They laughed as they traded stories of their past, bonding over their shared love of food and their outsider status. As the Andromeda drew closer to Zeta Centauri, the mood on the ship had completely transformed. The once tense atmosphere had been replaced by a sense of camaraderie and purpose. Zorax watched in amazement as the pirates worked alongside his crew, chopping vegetables and stirring pots with the same focus and determination they had once reserved for raiding and pillaging. "I never thought I'd see the day," he said to Jack, shaking his head in wonder. "You've worked a miracle here, human." Jack shrugged, a modest smile on his face. "It wasn't just me. Zark and his crew had it in them all along. They just needed someone to believe in them." Zorax clapped Jack on the shoulder, his grip firm. "Well, I'm grateful to you all the same. You've saved more than just my ship and my crew. You've given those pirates a chance at a better life." As the Andromeda prepared to dock at Zeta Centauri, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. He had set out to save the quantum crystals and the colony that depended on them. But in the process he had done so much more. He had shown a group of lost souls that they had value beyond their criminal past. He had given them a new skill, a new purpose, and a chance at a brighter future. And as he watched Zark and his crew disembark, their arms laden with containers of leftover stew and their faces beaming with excitement for the culinary journey ahead, Jack knew that he had found his own true calling in the universe. As the Andromeda docked at the bustling Zeta Centauri space station, Jack and Zark stood side by side, their eyes wide with excitement. They had spent the last few days of the journey huddled together, scribbling notes and sketches on scraps of paper as they brainstormed their vision for the future. "Are you ready for this?" Jack asked, turning to Zark with a grin. Zark nodded, his cybernetic eye glinting in the station's artificial light. "As ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this." Together they made their way to Zorax's quarters, their steps quick and purposeful. When they reached the door, Jack took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," Zorax called from inside. Jack and Zark entered the room to find the Krillian captain seated at his desk, his eyes fixed on a holographic display of the station's layout. "Captain Zorax," Jack said, his voice steady, "we have a proposition for you." Zorax leaned back in his chair, his eyebrows raised. I'm listening. Jack and Zark glanced at each other, a silent moment of understanding passing between them. Then Jack stepped forward. Zark and I want to open a restaurant together, he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. Here on Zeta Centauri, we want to serve delicious meals to weary space travelers, to give them a taste of home, no matter how far they are from it. Zorax's eyes widened, his mouth falling open in surprise. A restaurant, you two? Zark nodded, his expression serious. I know it seems crazy, but Jack has shown me that there's more to life than just surviving. He's given me a purpose, a reason to be better than I was before. Jack smiled at Zark, his heart swelling with pride. And Zark has a real talent for this. With his skills and my recipes, we could create something truly special. Zorax leaned forward, his gaze intense. And what about the cost? Opening a restaurant isn't cheap, especially on a space station like this. Jack and Zark exchanged another glance, their excitement tempered by a flicker of uncertainty. But before they could respond, Zorax held up a hand. I'll invest in your venture, he said, his voice firm. I've seen firsthand the impact you two can have. If anyone can make this work, it's you. Jack and Zark stared at Zorax, their mouths agape. You mean it? Jack asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zorax nodded, a smile spreading across his face. I do. Consider it my way of thanking you for everything you've done, for me, for my crew, and for those pirates you've reformed. Jack and Zark looked at each other, their eyes shining with tears of joy. They clasped hands, their grip tight. We won't let you down, Captain, Zark said, his voice thick with emotion. Over the next few weeks, Jack and Zark worked tirelessly to bring their vision to life. They found the perfect location in the heart of the space station, a cozy spot with a stunning view of the stars. They hired a crew of eager young chefs from all corners of the galaxy, each with their own unique culinary background. And then, on a warm artificial morning, Starlight Delights opened its doors for the first time. The restaurant was a riot of color and light, with vibrant murals on the walls and twinkling chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. The air was filled with the mouth-watering scent of simmering stews and baking bread, and the sound of laughter and chatter echoed through the dining room. As the first customers began to trickle in, Jack and Zark watched from the kitchen, their hearts bursting with pride. They saw Zorax and his crew, who had insisted on being the restaurant's first patrons. They saw families and friends, travelers and locals, all gathered together to share a meal and a moment of connection. And as the day went on, word began to spread. Tales of the delicious food and the heartwarming story behind the restaurant's founding made their way through the station's corridors and beyond. Soon, Starlight Delights was the talk of the galaxy, with space travelers from far and wide making detours just to taste Jack and Zark's creations. But it wasn't just the food that drew people in. It was the atmosphere of warmth and acceptance, the sense that anyone, no matter their past or their background, was welcome at Starlight Delights. It was the way Jack and Zark greeted every customer like an old friend, the way they shared their story with anyone who would listen. And as the weeks turned into months, Starlight Delights became more than just a restaurant. It became a symbol of hope and unity, a beacon of light in a galaxy that had seen its share of darkness. It proved that even the most hardened criminals could change their ways. That redemption was always possible through the power of food and friendship. Jack and Zark's tale became a legend, whispered in every corner of the galaxy. It inspired others to follow in their footsteps, to overcome their differences and work together towards a brighter future. And through it all, Jack and Zark remained at the heart of it, two unlikely friends who had found their true calling in the kitchen and in each other. As they stood together in the bustling dining room, watching the happy faces of their customers, Jack turned to Zark with a smile. "We did it," he said, his voice soft. "We really did it." Zark grinned, his cybernetic eye glinting in the warm light. "No, Jack, you did it. You believed in me when no one else would. You showed me that I could be more than just a pirate." Jack shook his head, his expression serious. "We did this together, Zark, you and me, partners in cooking and in life." Zark nodded, his gaze drifting out over the dining room. Partners, he echoed, the word a promise on his lips. And as they stood there, surrounded by the warmth and love of their little corner of the galaxy, Jack and Zark knew that they had found something truly special. Not just a restaurant, but a home, a family, and a future filled with endless possibilities. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.